Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best top laners for patch 5.17. So first up, I have Fiora. Fiora is one of the strongest top laners right now because she's got that true damage coming out of her passive, which just makes her a really strong duelist, and she's really strong like pretty much at all stages of the game because she's got great early game damage. She doesn't really fall off in the late game either like some of the other top laners do, so I think she's just all around a pretty solid pick right now. Her AoE heal that she has with her ultimate is just so good as well because in team fights, if you see like an enemy really low on HP, what you can do is put your ultimate on them, kill them, and then you get that AoE heal for your team, which is just so good, and it can basically single-handedly win you team fights. She's got the mobility with her Q now, which just makes her a really more viable pick in my opinion, because before her Q, she couldn't use it whenever she wanted. She could only use it to dash to a champion or to a minion, but now that she can use it to dash wherever she wants, it's definitely a lot better for just staying safer in the laning phase and for getting out of sticky situations. She does also have decent crowd control as well, coming out of her W and her E now, and she is also one of the strongest duelists in the game. A few cons to Fiora though is that she is pretty weak if she does fall behind, because she is like an auto attack champion basically, and if she doesn't have her items, she doesn't provide very strong CC for her team like someone like a Maokai does or a Malphite. So if she does fall behind, then she's not going to be able to provide much for her team other than her AoE heal from her ultimate, and she can get kited pretty hard in team fights if her Q is on cooldown. Next up, I have Gnar. I still think that Gnar is a pretty good pick. I'm not seeing a lot of him lately because we're seeing quite a bit of like Garen and Darius being played, but I think that Gnar is one of Darius's biggest counters, so if you're looking for a good counter to him, I would definitely recommend picking up Gnar because Gnar can kite the Darius really well with the slow on his Q as well as his jump on his E. If you get hooked by the Darius, all you have to do is jump away and then just throw your Q out and start kiting him, so I do think that Gnar is a pretty good pick into Darius. He's got massive teamfight potential as well because in Mega Form you have 3 CC abilities, and if you can land a good Gnar in a teamfight, which is his ultimate, then that could just single-handedly win you the game as well. So I just like that. I like that Gnar has that game-changing element in his kit. He's also ranged and melee, ranged in his normal form and then melee in mega form, which is just really good for the laning phase, and also in melee form it's great for team fighting. He's got the gap closer on his E as well, which makes him a pretty safe laner, and it also is really good for engaging as well. And he's got a game-changing ultimate, like I said. He's also got pretty good kill pressure in the laning phase, especially if he is going up against a melee top laner. And one con to Gnar is that it's hard to manage his rage at times. If you're not used to playing Gnar, then you might find yourself just going into Mega Form at the not really the best possible time. So you want to try to stay at around like 70% rage on Gnar if you think a team fight's going to start. Like if your team's grouping for Baron or your team's grouping for Dragon, then just try to keep that rage a little bit below 100% because you do definitely want to be in Mega Gnar when you are in a team fight. So next up I have Riven. Riven is just a really snowbally top lane champion, and if you can get a lead with Riven in the laning phase, then you can just basically take over the game because she's just got insane damage and CC with her kit. She's also got insane mobility coming out of her E and her Q, and it's just really annoying when you're playing against a Riven and you've got her at like 10 HP, or not 10 HP, but pretty low, and she just gets away by using her dashes, and it's just so annoying to play against her, which is why I think she's just a pretty good pick, even though she is pretty annoying to play against. She's got great crowd control as well, coming out of her E, or not coming out of her E, but coming out of her W and her Q as well, and her shield is really nice for just dodging a lot of damage in the laning phase. She's just a really good solid laner because if you know how to use your E correctly and you can use it at the right time, then you can definitely negate a lot of the enemy's damage and just end up winning trades by getting a nice shield off when you are in the laning phase. And she is also a great duelist, like I said, and does have really good burst as well. A few cons to Riven though is that she is pretty weak if she does fall behind like Fiora, because she's a melee like all-in champion, so if she does fall behind and she doesn't have the damage to jump in and kill a target, then she is going to be not as useful as if you're playing a tanky top laner. And she does have some harder lane matchups because she is a melee champion, and I like to pick like Gnar into Riven. Even though some people think that Riven is a counter to Gnar, I find myself doing really well as Gnar against Riven because I just kite her out in the laning phase. So if you are looking for a decent counter to her, then I would recommend playing Gnar. Next up I have Irelia. So I think this is one of the first times in like 6 or 7 patches that I haven't had Irelia at the #1 spot. I do think one other top laner just outclasses her a little bit right now, so that's why I don't have her there. But nevertheless, pros to Irelia are that she's a very strong duelist. If she can get that 2-second stun off on her opponent, then she's pretty much guaranteed to win that duel every single time. And because of the true damage coming out of her W and just her massive power spike once she does pick up her Trinity Force, it makes her one of the strongest dueling top laners in the game. She does have that great mid-game power spike with the Trinity Force because it just synergizes so well with her, and she can just get a load of Sheen procs off by using all of her abilities. She's also got pretty good sustain in the laning phase with her W, and her level 6 all-in is really good. If you can get the Sheen on Irelia before you get level 6 or when you hit level 6, then your all-in potential once you get that is so good. And she also does have that gap closer with her Q, which is really nice for just last hitting minions because it does get the refresh on it if you do get the killing blow on a minion. And it's also really nice for just dashing to a low health minion and then dashing to your opponent in the laning phase to close the gap, or just for simply gap closing onto your enemy. And she does also have decent wave clear because her ultimate is on a pretty short cooldown. She's a bruiser as well, so all I like to get on Irelia is the Trinity Force and then go full tank after that. You can go Blade of the Ruined King, or you could go Maw as well on Irelia, or if you are up against like an AP top laner. But I find that Trinity Force is just enough damage, and then you can go full tank after that and just soak a load of damage in teamfights while still dealing a lot as well. A few cons to Irelia are that she is a little bit weaker for the first few levels in the laning phase, so I would recommend starting the Flask on her so you can sustain the early game. And she is also pretty mana hungry in the early game, which is why you should start that Flask as well. So last but not least, on the top 5 for patch 5.17, I have Gangplank. I think that Gangplank is just the strongest top laner right now. If you can get his barrel mechanics down, he's definitely one of the harder top laners to play in the game, so if you haven't played him yet, I would recommend getting your barrel mechanics down in normal games before heading into ranked, because I think that if you don't know how to use his barrels, then he's definitely not the most rewarding champion, because you're going to be lacking a load of damage. But if you can get his barrel mechanics down, he can deal so much AoE damage in teamfights. It's just absolutely absurd, and it's kind of unbelievable how much damage he can do in teamfights if he does get a chain of barrels going. He's also got a very strong late game once he does get like his Trinity Force, his Infinity Edge, and then I also like to go Youmuu's Ghostblade on Gangplank. The power spike you get with those items is just really, really good. He also does have pretty good wave clear with his barrels, and he's got the low cooldown cleanse with his W, so you can use that really nicely. Like, say in a team fight, if you get caught out by an Ashe ultimate, you can just use your W to completely negate the enemy's engage, so it's definitely a great ability if you do end up finding yourself getting caught. His global ultimate, in my opinion, is one of the best parts of his kit as well, because you can use that to just change the tides of fights. For example, if your bot lane is going for an all-in, you can just use your ultimate down bot lane once you hit level 6, and you can pick up a few assists, and you can even pick up a kill if you get lucky and you get the last hit with your ultimate. So when you do hit level 6's Gangplank, always look around the map to see if your mid laner or your bottom lane is fighting, because you can definitely end up winning the fight for your laner if you do get a nice ultimate down there. And he does counter most melee picks in the laning phase pretty hard as well. A few cons to Gangplank is that his barrel mechanics are very hard to get used to, in my opinion. I think they're definitely one of the hardest mechanics in the game, so like I said before, if you haven't played him in normals yet, I would definitely recommend doing that before heading into ranked. And he is also a pretty easy gank target in the early game if he is pushed out in the laning phase, because he doesn't have a gap closer, and even though he's got his W to remove any CC, if the enemies chain CC on Gangplank, then he's not going to be able to get away unless he flashes, so be careful that you're not pushing out too far in the laning phase unless you do have it warded. So next up for top lane, I have Garen. Garen is probably one of the most simplistic top laners in the game, so if you are looking for more of an easy top lane pick, I would definitely recommend trying out Garen. I do think that he's a much stronger pick right now because of the buffs he got to his ultimate. He can just completely blow up someone in a team fight, and he doesn't even need to build a load of damage. You can just go like Black Cleaver on him, go Youmuu's Ghostblade, and then go full tank after that, and because of the true damage potential he's got with his ultimate, he really doesn't need any more damage, and he can just transition that into full tank. So I do like Garen if you are looking for an easier top lane pick, but I do think that the champions on my top 5 can have a better impact in the game than a Garen can. Next up I have Olaf. So Olaf is a really good pick if the enemies have heavy CC, because Olaf's ultimate just completely negates that, and he doesn't even care about CC when he does have his ultimate up. So he's a pretty good laner as well, and if the enemies do have a strong CC comp, I would definitely recommend picking up Olaf for the top lane. Next up I have Malphite. Malphite is a pretty good tank top laner right now. He doesn't really get punished in the laning phase too much because we aren't seeing very many ranged top laners like we were before. We're not seeing the likes of Lissandra or Swain played very much in the top lane anymore, so that just allows Malphite to just farm up in the laning phase, get his tank items, and just be a really big tank when it comes to team fighting. If he can get a good ultimate off in a team fight on the back line, if he can get that off on like the AD carry or the mid laner, then he can just completely win the fight for his team. So if you are looking for a good tank top laner, then Malphite is definitely a very viable choice. Next up, I have Darius. So I'm a little bit skeptical on Darius. I think that he is a pretty strong pick for the lower elos, but I think that once you go up against enemies who know how to kite, or if you're just playing against champions like Braum or Vayne, it's so hard for Darius to get to the back line and to just deal a lot of damage in teamfights, because he needs to get those stacks with his auto attacks in teamfights, and if he's getting kited by like Braum ultimate, Braum Q, Vayne E, it's going to be so hard for him to deal maximum damage in teamfights. A lot of people will disagree with me and say that Darius is the most broken top laner in the game right now, but if you just build a comp against him, like if you build some kite and if you build some disengage, then he can definitely be completely negated, and I don't think he is as strong as people are making him out to be, because he does have that really glowing weakness of just being able to be kited really hard. Next up I have Hecarim. Hecarim is a really good snowballing top lane champion as well. If you can get ahead with Hecarim, because he has a really good power spike once he picks up that Trinity Force, then he can just end up solo carrying games really hard. If you are in a matchup in the laning phase where you don't have a lot of kill pressure, I would recommend rushing home guards on Hecarim and then looking to get a TP home guard down bot lane once you do hit level 6, because Hecarim's all in with the TP home guards at level 6 is really good with his ultimate as well as his E, so definitely look to do that if you are in a matchup where you don't have a lot of kill pressure. But if you do have kill pressure against your opponent in the laning phase, then rush that Sheen, and I would recommend taking Ignite as well on Hecarim for top lane, because you do actually have pretty good kill pressure in some matchups. So last but not least on the honorable mentions for this patch, I have Shen. Due to Shen's global ultimate, I just think he's a great pick for solo queue, because for example, if the enemy jungler comes to try to gank bot lane and you have level 6, you can just completely turn that fight by using an ultimate down bot lane. So I think that he's just a great pick for solo queue due to his pretty low cooldown taunt and due to his just his ultimate being really game changing. So that's all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.